Hi, Karen. Good to see you.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm very happy to participate in this video. And it's, of course, because of the Podcast City conference we're going to have 1st of December, where you're a speaker and one of the people. We're very much happy to have you involved in this conference. And we're going to ask you about 4 different questions, and you're welcome to add some other things you want to add. And we're going to go through what you have done, what you're working with right now, and what's going on in your life. I'm going to show you share the screen with a couple of things here. I'm going to start here, just a second. Okay, so this is about the Podcast City conference that we're going to talk about. And this is Mineta Transportation Institute. If you can say maybe a few words about this.
Sure. So I'm Dr. Karen Philbrick, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mineta Transportation Institute at San José State University. We lead 4 competitively selected multi-university consortia, all focused on improving the mobility of people and goods. We accomplish our goals through surface transportation research, education, workforce development, and technology transfer. And it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you, Karen. And this is you. So this is your page on here. So please say a few about yourself. Just a few. I know you have a very impressive resume, but we put in the link later. So say a few words about yourself, please.
Well, thank you for that. I think as a transportation leader, I like to highlight the fact that I'm a psychologist by training, because when we look to address the critical workforce shortage we have in the United States, we need to expand our thinking beyond the borders of urban planning and engineering and realize that transportation really is a melting pot of different backgrounds. We have psychologists, journalists, graphic designers, planners, and many others, and we need to get people from all realms excited about this industry.
Yeah, sounds like music to my ears. I'm very happy to hear that. Yes. So I put together a few questions for you. One is, do you believe that the current form of car-centric mobility is the pinnacle of human mobility and innovation?
Well, the short answer is no and hell no.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I go straight to the second one. So if not, why do you think it matters?
I think it matters because cars have actually existed for less than 200 years, and yet so much of our environment and our lives are centered around this car culture and motor vehicles, often to the detriment of the earth, our communities, and our own health. In fact, last year in the US, on average, people spent 42 hours stuck in traffic. And in larger cities, that doubles in some cases. Not only that, it's not the safest form of transportation. Globally, 1.3 million people die annually in car crashes. We don't call them accidents because they are avoidable. They are crashes. And in the US alone, that was 43,000 people. We need to create spaces that are more user-friendly, that support our vulnerable road users, including those walking and biking. And we need to move away from this congestion, this car-centered culture that decreases our emotional and physical well-being and certainly negatively impacts our environment. Transportation is, after all, the greatest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, I've been working for this for some while now, and I came to kind of one of my comments myself on all this is that it's more than just all these problems. It's also it kind of separates people. They never meet. They meet in the mall. They meet and with family members, but in between it's empty. It's kind of sterile in human interaction.
I see what you're saying.
I'm quite concerned about that. Yeah.
You're highlighting how the single occupancy vehicle decreases human interaction and creates more of an isolated environment. I want to say something about that last point, which is when we talk about transportation, you, among everybody, knows how critical it is to a full and well-balanced life. It touches all of us, whether we have a car or how we get the devices we use to remain connected or the clothes we wear. Even if somebody lives completely off the grid, they still use an active form of transportation by walking or rolling to get where they need to go. And so this is critical that we are using transportation for the positive benefit of connecting communities, places, and people. Some of the latest scientific research actually shows that social isolation is so detrimental to your physical health that it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day for people who are
Oh my
truly
God.
isolated.
Wow. I
So
believe you.
yeah, and so through public transportation options and other different modes, we are giving people that life-saving opportunity to reach those social exchanges.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, so well, since you definitely do matter, what do you think we should do about all this? And what can we do better than just continuing on current path towards electric self-driving cars? Would that solve the problems?
I think there's a number of things that we can do. First of all, we need to change the belief, the cognitive framework that the car is the epitome of success and the ultimate experience to have. We need to be influencing and showing people that we value and respect using public transit and other modes so that it builds that hierarchy that other people want to emulate. We need to create more public transit options that lead people to where they want to go and need to be. We need to make sure that those transit options occur with frequency and are easy to get to. We know from the literature that the average person is not willing to walk more than a quarter or a half mile to get to a transit option. And so if they get in that car, they're likely to take that car to their final destination. We need to make sure that people see transit as safe and viable. We need to make sure that we are expanding services because we know, again, from the literature here in the US, that the majority of riders are from the Black and Brown communities and historically underrepresented because they can't necessarily afford an automobile. It's incredibly expensive to own a car, not only the cost of purchasing it, but the cost of maintaining it, having insurance, gasoline, and all of those other hidden costs you might not think of. So we have lots of things on the horizon. We have advanced air mobility that's coming up, automated transit networks, and different opportunities of trip chaining that will help alleviate congestion, improve health and wellness, and create a more sustainable environment.
Since me being European, a couple of things that it's slightly different. For example, when you go to public transit, the people riding public transit who can't afford cars are basically women, disabled, and children. So I have kind of the habit, every time I see a bus or a tram passing by, I always count how many people are on there, usually too few in my views. And second, the people who are there are usually the same category. Now being here in the United States, you're absolutely right. You can see there's a difference in the melting pot of people here. It's very different. And it's worrisome, definitely. Yeah. So I'm going to go to the last here. A vast majority of all trips are local. Do you think it would be worth looking into more efficient urban transportation solutions? Basically what I'm working on.
The answer is yes. And more importantly, I think it's an imperative for our continued health and well-being. If we don't look into other options, then we can't create a congestion-free, sustainable environment. I mean, we've got knowledge and data that shows that when you have heavy congestion, it creates more pollution. And for schools and children located in close proximity to that, they have higher rates of asthma and other health-related problems. Yeah. In fact, we even know that people who spend long times in commute tend to have higher rates of diabetes, cardiovascular distress, higher weight, and congestion has even been linked to domestic violence increase.
Oh my God, yeah, that is
so frustrated
depressing.
And angry. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely, depressing. I believe 100% in creating different modes. And no conversation about this would be complete if we didn't touch on safety. Yeah. I said earlier some of those statistics about the number of people that die annually in car crashes. Do you know that public transportation is 10 times safer than operating a motor vehicle? I mean, there's just so much data to support that we can't continue to be doing things the way that we are. And importantly, Krister, certainly here in the US and in the Silicon Valley where I'm based, we don't have the land space to create more lanes. We just don't. So we need to think smarter, more innovative, and more creatively about how we're going to solve congestion.
Yeah, thank you. As you know, I come up with an idea. I call it automated transit communities. After talking with Mr. Joel McDowell, who is the CEO of ACIDS, Atlanta Airport Community Improvement District, and a couple of other people, and who has been encouraged me to do this. So the idea is to have this meeting at the conference at 1st of December. And the idea behind this, I'm going to show this here. We call it We Doing Better. We have this vision about public transit. It's all about public transit. And one of the reasons I started doing this is because there's huge investments in self-driving cars and electric vehicles. And I do understand that people want to do good and want to do better options, but it's still the car. Nothing's really changed there. So, and if you're looking to how much investment, and I read an article from Bloomberg Journal, and I think it was 6th of October last year, and it says after $100 billion invested in self-driving automobiles and cars, has nothing to show for, and that makes me a bit depressed, because let's have an idea or experiment here. Let's say if we have $100 billion into development of public transit and new ideas instead, I'm pretty sure we could have better results. So this idea, we call it automated transit communities. That's going to start, I hope now for this 1st of December conference. So we have done this explaining. There's a homepage for this, explaining all about this. We also have something called a framework. And the framework, I'll show it separately, is basically 10 rules, commandments, whatever you want to call it. So, because if you want to innovate, if you want to do better, you have to define what is better. You cannot just say, come out there, come up with something better. Fine, but you have to make some framework. And this is framework that everyone's going to have access to good mobility. It should be cost effective, both for the poor and wealthy. And I can go on for forever here. This is really important. And we look forward to have this meeting on the 1st of December. Since you're there, I hope. Yeah, sorry. Yes, Karen.
I want to make a comment, which is, I don't think you talked about autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles. I want to be clear. I think that we need to be thinking innovatively in all realms, and why those are still cars. We don't have a one-size-fits-all option. So I think there's space for ATNs, there's space for public transit in the more traditional form, advanced air mobility, autonomous vehicles. But oftentimes, the legal framework does not keep up with the pace of innovation, which makes it very difficult to implement.
Yeah.
And certainly when you're talking about autonomous vehicles, you have a user acceptance issue to address. Like, I know my 81-year-old mom is probably not going to feel comfortable getting into a car without a driver if it's on the road. But if it was a separate network like ATNs, then that's a different story. That creates a safer, more secure environment.
Yeah, and that is actually what we are aiming for. I just want to be clear. We do not. It's one of these 10 things that it basically creates innovation that is not private. That is not a car. The framework is to innovate ATN, for example, technology or whatever people come up with that is much better than we have today. That's the whole point. I also want to, it's interesting to see the difference between the European framework and the United States. One of the things that I encountered in Sweden was very bizarre. It's about policy. One of the automated vehicles they put into between big mall in northern Stockholm and one of the subway stations, they couldn't implement it because the regulatory agency said, no, you can't, because there's no back mirrors. You cannot see back. But since there's no driver, of course there's no need. So they had to put in a rear mirror on both sides of the vehicle. It's you know, and things like that. You know, I understand why people want to have that and to make sure so you can see back. But there's cameras, and it didn't accept it. So actually, we have had, in order to test this experiment, they had to put in rear mirrors, and that's just one small example of many why it's really hard to put these kind of ideas and new modes into mobility. Okay, I
think that's a beautiful example that's very relatable of the challenges that we have.
Yeah. Okay, I don't have much more, so I want to ask you if there's anything else you add to this and this conference in 1st of December and everything we've been talking about before we end this interview.
My final thought is I'm really looking forward to the conference on November 30th and December 1st. I think being together with like-minded individuals that have a vision for a better future, one that connects our communities, our people, and our places with innovative options that don't pollute, that are safe, that are secure, and don't add to the congestion is critically important to the way forward for everybody's health and well-being. And I'm ecstatic that I get to be a participant. So thank you, Krister, for your leadership in this space. You do work that we all admire, and I'm very grateful.
Thank you, Dr. Philbrick. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to see you at the conference. Take care.